Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to another video. And in this video, I will be analyzing the game from round one of the World Chess Championship match played in Astana, Kazakhstan between Ian Nepomniachtchi, who had white, and Ding Liren, who had black. So in this game, Ian Nepomniachtchi, no surprises, opened up the game with 1e4. His favorite move traditionally throughout his chess career, his main weapon, and the move that Robert James Fischer characterized as best by test. Now, Ding Liren played 1e5, which is also his main weapon throughout his chess career, even though he did think for 49 seconds, which might make some people think that he might have some other options prepared as well. Well, we will only find out in the next games. So e4, e5, and here Ian Nepomniachtchi played knight f3, a very good move, which develops a piece and attacks the pawn on e5. And a very economical way for black to defend this pawn on e5 is by also developing a piece and bringing their knight to c6. The other alternative in this position, the main one that you see at a very high level, is knight f6, the Petrov or Russian defense. But Ding Liren went for knight c6. And here was the first important point of the game, because we were waiting to see what would Ian Nepomniachtchi play. I mean, traditionally, he has been playing the Spanish, but apart from the Spanish, in the previous World Championship match, he also tried the Italian. The Italian, for those that don't know, is bishop c4. Also, he has played in the past the Scotch, which is characterized by 3d4. Even the four knights, the three knights, which should become a four knights game, is an option. But he stuck to one of his main weapons, bishop b5, which is the move that you almost always, but not every single time, but almost always you see at a World Championship level. I mean, there have been a few games in the previous years with the Italian. Kasparov played the Scotch, 3d4, but he stuck with 3 bishop b5. So a6, one of the main moves. The other big alternative is knight f6, which is the Berlin defense. This was popularized by Vladimir Kramnik in his match against Kasparov in 2000 in London. So a6 was played, and bishop a4. The other alternative is bishop takes c6, which leads to the Spanish exchange, but this is considered harmless for black. Anyway, bishop a4 was played, and knight f6, the main move, and castles. Now, some people prefer to go 5d3 just to avoid the exchange, the open Spanish, which could have arisen here after knight takes e4. However, Ding Liren is mainly known for being a big advocate of the Marshall Gambit. So he continued with his main guns, and he goes bishop e7. Now, in this position, white has a decision to make. They played bishop takes c6, which is a move that avoids the Marshall. And it's not the only way to avoid the Marshall, because another way to avoid it is by going d3. 6d3, and then let's say after, because now there is a threat, which is to win a pawn. What is white threatening here? White wants to play bishop takes c6, and regardless how black captures, and obviously black should capture with the d pawn to open up the queen and the bishop in these positions. Always you should take back on c6 with the d pawn, but white wants to play knight takes c5 and win a pawn. So black needs to do something about this after 63, and the main move is b5, bishop b3, and now d6. And here white decides if they want to play c3 or a3. They need to play one or the other, and the reason is that now black is creating a positional threat of knight a5, winning the bishop pair. And the bishop on b3 is very important for white, both in the Spanish and in the Italian. White cannot afford to allow that bishop to get exchanged for the knight on c6. The knight on c6 is traditionally black's worst minor piece in these openings, the king's pawn openings, and the double king's pawn openings. And the reason for that is because the knight on c6 blocks in the c pawn. So d3 would have been an alternative, But the main move here after bishop e7 is rook e1. And after rook e1, I suppose, I don't have access to Ding Liren's preparation, but I suppose he would have played b5, bishop b3, and now castles, and intending to play the marshal. And of course here, if c3, d5, then this is the marshal, and here, even here, there is the move d4. If white doesn't want the main line, I mean, d4 is possible. The main line is e d5, knight d5, and no, black has not blundered the pawn. They have sacrificed the pawn, and after c6, black gets an attack. They want to go bishop d6 and perhaps queen h4, start an attack against the white king. This opening variation of the Spanish originated from the game back in the 1920s, I think, between Jose Raul Capablanca and Frank Marshall. So going backwards, apart from c3, white has a number of ways to avoid the marshal, and sidelines, I mean. d3 is one of them, d4 is another one, a4 is another one, h3 is another one. h3 and a4 were the choices of Ian Nepomniachtchi in his previous World Championship match, where he lost from Magnus Carlsen. Anyway, in the game, the move that was played was bishop takes c6, and funnily enough, this move was played by Anish Giri against Ding Liren in the candidates tournament of 2021. So here, like I said before, by far the best way for black to capture the bishop is with the d pawn, to open up the light square bishop and the queen. And that's what they did, of course. And here, white needs to defend the pawn on e4, and there are two main ways of doing that. One of them is d3, which is what Anish Giri played against Ding Liren and beat him in that game in 2021. And the other option is rook e1. So what happened in the game? Rook e1 was played. Personally, I was more familiar with d3, but anyway. Here, knight d7 was played because now white is threatening the pawn on e5. Black needs to defend it in some way. Knight d7 was played, which defends the pawn. There were other alternatives too. And now d4. So here we can see the advantage of not going d3 is that white can go d4 in one go. And that's what they did. Takes and takes with the queen. Now, normally we are told that you should not develop your queen very early in the game. However, here the queen is well placed. The queen cannot be attacked by a knight coming on c6, for example. And the queen, of course, is threatening g7. So black needs to do something about that, and they castled. Very important to castle your king early on in the game so that they are safe. And here they castled. Bishop f4 was played. And yeah, activating the bishop, developing a piece, fighting for the center. And now knight c5, which offers an exchange of queens. However, white avoids it. It's a very dynamic position because even though black has the bishop pair, white has better development maybe and more space, and of course a better pawn structure because black has doubled pawns. So it's let's say the game is dynamically balanced. That's the right term. Of course, what black should avoid and what white should aim for would be to exchange everything, and then the king and pawn endgame is just winning for white. And why is that the case? Because black cannot create a passed pawn on the queen side, while white can create a passed pawn on the king side. So queen e3 was played, and now bishop g4, which develops a piece, and knight d4. Okay. Queen d7, which connects the rooks. Knight c3 develops the last piece of white that was not developed, from the minor pieces, I mean. Rook to d8, okay, threatening the knight on d4, and now knight f5. And here, another alternative would be bishop takes and pawn takes. This would be equal. However, Ding Liren preferred another route. They preferred knight e6, and now after knight takes e7, queen takes e7, bishop g3. In this position, I personally prefer white, and the reason is very simple. Black no longer has the bishop pair, and white is putting some pressure because every exchange favors them, because of what I mentioned before about the king and pawn game. So bishop h5, prophylactic move, f3, okay, f6, which makes some space to reroute the bishop, h3, h6, king h2, bishop f7, rook to d1, fighting for the open file, b6, which controls now even more the c5 square, a3 by white, also good move, controls the b4 square. Let's say the queen cannot go there now. a5, okay, knight d2, exchange of rooks, and the other rook now goes to the open d file. Open files are extremely important in chess, and this is where your rooks should belong. Rook d3, c5. So what has black achieved? Black has placed all their pawns on dark squares, and that's a really good strategy because they have a light square bishop, which is now not blocked at all by his pawns. All 7 pawns of black here are placed on the dark squares, and there is a light square bishop. Great strategy by black, and also most of these pawns defend each other, which is also great. Queen d2, c6, takes with the knight, queen f4, okay, b5, queen b8, king h7, bishop d6, attacks the queen, queen d7, sidesteps, knight goes to g3, knight e8, sorry, knight e6, f4, h5, yeah, the bishop defends the pawn on h5, c3, good move, it controls the d4 square, stops the knight from coming there, perhaps, c5, c4, h4, and offers a trade of queens. White rejects it, and the reason is that their queen is quite active there, it's well placed. But now bishop e8 defends the pawn on c6. Knight f5, queen d7, another offer of a trade of queens, queen b8, again, white sidesteps the exchange, queen to d8, an exchange of queens happened now, knight d4, and knight b7, hitting the bishop, e5, king to g8. Very important in the endgame, guys, is to have an active king, because especially when the queens get off, then it's really important for your king to be active in the endgame and to have a safe square as well. King g3, bishop d7, bishop c7, attacking, keeping an eye on the pawn on a5, knight into c5. So now black temporarily sacrifices the pawn on a5, which white grabs, but now king f7, bishop b4, and knight d3. So black is going to take on b2 and win back the pawn, e6. Here, after bishop takes c6, that was forced because or else they would lose a piece, so they took, and now they took on c6, and after bishop d7, yeah, here was an important moment, because if knight takes b2, then the winning move is knight d8, and the knight and the bishop together work very well as a team here, and black is not check, it's a fork, and they lose their bishop because the king cannot go somewhere where it will protect the bishop. This position here illustrates a very important theme, that when you have a bishop and the knight, it's a good idea, they are stronger together if the knight and the bishop are on the same color. Why is that? Because from the same color, the knight controls light squares, so that the knight there, it controls 4 light squares, that is b7, c6, e6, and f7. So the knight controls 4 light squares, and the bishop, of course, controls this entire long dark diagonal. So knights on dark squares control the light squares, bishops on dark squares control, of course, the dark squares. So having a bishop and a knight, they are much stronger when they are placed on the same color, because the bishop will control the dark squares and the knight will control the light squares. And you don't want them to fight for the same squares, basically. It's as simple as that. So instead of that, of course, a player of Ding Liren's level saw it, and they went bishop d7 first, the intermediate move. I cannot stress enough how important it is. Knight d4, knight takes b2, king f3, knight d3, g3, just making sure all the pawns are safe. Knight c1, king e3, and he offered him a draw, and he took it. Okay, so this was a very interesting game, some good preparation by Ian Nepomniachtchi. Ding Liren was under pressure in this game, and he managed to defend and get a draw in his first game ever fighting for the World Championship, while on the other hand, Nepomniachtchi, in my opinion at least, has the advantage of having experience from this kind of games because he played against Magnus Carlsen in the World Championship match of 2021. Regardless if he lost, he still got the experience of playing the match for the World Crown. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, guys. I would appreciate if you could give it a like and to subscribe to my channel. If you are a subscriber, I will catch you on the next video. I am planning to make commentary and this kind of videos, analysis of all the games in the World Championship match. Of course, I need to fit that around my schedule, so I might not be able to upload them immediately, but that's my plan. Anyway, if you're a subscriber, I'll catch you at the next video. Thank you very much for watching until the end. I really appreciate your time. I hope you learned something new and you took value from this video, and bye for now.